Welcome. In this video, we're going to start looking at data wrangling, and in particular, we're going to look at the initial bringing data in, inspecting it, and then preparing it for use. Because until we have the data in a format and everything that we can actually start the analysis, it's of no value to us. The three steps that we go through to make that happen is the initial review of the data, reformatting any data, and then repairing or replacing any missing values or erroneous data that's in there. The functions that we're going to use as we go through this are count, counta, countif, countifs, max, min, and then we're going to use a look at a pivot table to also make your life a little easier in this. The wage data is the data that I want you to work with, and the first step in any type of analysis whenever you bring data in is you need to copy that data and put it somewhere else so that you are not manipulating your actual data. And I can't emphasize that enough that that there are so many analysts that get data and they start working on it and they don't make an original copy of the data, so they end up in typical fashion. The hardest part oftentimes of working with data is just getting it clean and ready. So you're going to make mistakes in that area. So having your original data in one location that you can go back to later is really important. So what I have here, review sections 2.2, 2.3 of the textbook. In particular, look at examples 2.2, 2.3, and then again, be a good analyst here. Copy this data and then bring it into a new worksheet and leave this as your original data, just in case you make a mistake. So I'm going to left click, come across, capture all of the stuff here, come to the bottom. Once I have all of this in here, I'm going to copy, and you can copy by coming up to File. Oh, I lied to you there. It used to be in there. You can, from here, you can take and copy from clicking here, or you can use the function keys, and I think it tells you here also. Control C is the function to copy. Open up a new tab in your spreadsheet, and then we're going to paste, and then paste. It'll also tell you here that you can just use Control V, and so I'm going to hit Control V, and now we have saved all of we've taken a copy of the original data, and then label this adjusted data down here. So if you double left click, you can rename it adjusted data. All right. Once you've done that, you can also adjust your columns. If you want to allow Excel to determine the width of the column, you can left click. Once you hover over, you can double left click and it will do that for you. Or you can, in this case here, you can left click and drag and make it the size that you want it to be. What I want you to do in this exercise is I want you to look at the questions and then answer them. I'm going to use functions, and I would like for you to, whenever you're submitting this, also use the function keys here instead of counting things and then just putting numbers in. So how many employees are in the file? All right, so this is a count equals count. And then once I say equals count, Excel is asking me count what? And what we're looking for are values. And Excel, whenever they're looking at values, they will allow you to put in a range or an array. So if I come back to the employees and I left click on the first employee here, drag all the way to the very last one, it says that there's 604 employees. Okay. Next, we could do the exact same thing for hourly wages. Okay. Equals count. You'll notice that as you start to type it, Excel will give you the options of the number or the functions that are available. If you left click on count, it's a double left click, it will fill in the rest of the function for you, and then you just have to come in, left click, and drag through all of the wages. And close it off, and it says, okay, there's 602. Well, we should know from this, if there are 604 employees, but we only have 602 wages, we're missing 2, right? There is a function, though, inside of Excel that is called count. And let's go ahead and start that. Count blank. So if we do count blank, again, look at the exact same array. And close it off. It says that there are 2 that are missing. All right, that's good for us. I mean, that makes sense. One of the steps that's in here is for you to go in and identify where the hourly wage is blank. All right, so also the hourly wage in the industry fields, and then it wants you to highlight those so that they're easy to see where the issues are. I'm going to cover that now. If you left click, what we're trying to do is, easily identify where these blanks are. If you left click on hourly wage, since that's the one we're looking for right now, and you go up to data, and in the sort area, inside of sort, there are options. One of them takes you to a table, a wizard that you can go in and sort by, or you can do a fast sort, smallest to largest, or fast sort, largest to smallest. Let's just do smallest to largest, so I'm clicking here. Excel says, wait a second, here's a warning. Do you want just to do this column, or do you want to take everything that's in here? Now, again, the information that's with employee 1 needs to stay with employee 1, so we want to expand the selection. All right, so I'm going to click sort. It has gone through, and whenever we've done this sorting, we can now left click over here, drag to the bottom of our data. And at the bottom of our data, we find that these 2 did not sort because they're blank. If we go to home, in the home box, you can choose whatever color you want. Usually whenever I'm trying to identify things that are potential issues, I will color those yellow so that they're managed. All right, so we've colored those. Another thing that we notice as we are looking at this data, if we are looking at trying to repair the wage data, it looks like wages run from about $24.28 all the way up to, wow, $490. Something seems to be out of alignment with these 2 data points here. You see, this is really too high. So this data and that data, I'm going to put them in as an orange. Something seems to be really odd with that data for me. So we're going to need to come back at some point here and review those and see what's happening with these people. Because, I haven't messed with the data yet to really know how much an automotive engineer makes. However, if I look up here, these automotive engineers here are much lower. They're in much, $49 instead of these here. It almost looks like somebody has perhaps what we call fat fingered with this. And when the people are fat fingering it, that probably to me would make more sense that it was $47, that there's an extra 1 in front of it, that's an issue. Or this one here, that maybe there's a 0 that is here, that maybe it should be $49.59. So again, those are issues that probably need to be addressed. Again, what we're trying to accomplish is, if we're missing a lot of data, do we need to either impute a value and put it in there, or are we better off with just leaving it blank? And that's a question that we do wrangle with in working with Excel or any other platform. Which data is real and which data is not real? And in our cases here, what we're going to do is we're going to say that these two values are probably not right, correct? As a matter of fact, one of the steps in here tells you that you are going to end up needing to, as you adjust your data, that you need to create a new column called adjusted. And while we're in it now, I'm just going to pull back down. And in this adjusted column, I'm going to say that this probably should be $47, which means that, yes, I just adjusted this. This column that's probably more realistic. Another thing that happens to us whenever we're looking at our data is oftentimes the format hides things from us. In particular, if we go to this column, we will notice that on the home page or on the home tab, this is a number. However, inside of number, oftentimes we can use this to decrease the decimal numbers that we are showing, and this one here increases the decimal numbers that we're showing. So sometimes with my data, especially whenever I have these, decimals and whatever else, something may be hidden there. I mean, we may be stuck here with this in 2 areas instead of 3. So I'm going to go down through here just a quick look, see if all of these end in 0. And again, as you go through here, if you find something that doesn't end in 0, what you would need to do is adjust it, and then in the adjusted column, go ahead and click to bring that back over to where it says yes. After you've done that, let's adjust our decimal point again. And then one of the things that it does tell you in this exercise, this is a currency. So there's no reason, since this isn't a currency, that we don't go ahead and just left click on currency and turn this into a currency amount. All right? So again, when you do adjust something, make sure that you write on here that yes, it has been adjusted, so we can go back later and make a change for it. We're going to come back in just a few minutes and address these two values here to impute what they should be. All right, so we'll come back to that in just one second. Let's go back up to the top because there are other things that we need to look at. On industry, look what happens using Excel if we want to see how many industry fields are there. We're going to use equals count. Everything that is in industry and it says, congratulations, there are 0 files with industry. We know that's not true. We can see it right here. The problem with Excel is Excel, when you use equals count, it only addresses numeric values. And we can see when we go in here that this is a general value. All right? Again, you can change it to other things, but it's a text value which comes up as general. Excel is able to work with that if you use the count a function instead of just the count function. All right, so there we go. Use count a if it's categorical. Again, you can calculate the number of missing fields in here. You can also, you will be able to go through and address these other things that are up here. Last one of the count functions, let me go back over here. So you use count A. Let's look at countif. Countif is looking at the number of items that meet a certain criteria. So this question is asking us how many construction jobs are here? Equals count if says give me a range and then give me a criteria. Separate them by a comma. So here's my range. Separate the range by a comma. And then here's what we have to do. We need to put some sort of requirement or a criteria. If I'm talking about using numeric data, all right, I can just put in things like greater than $30 by typing in greater than 30. And it will go through and count all the ones that are greater than 30. However, since we're not using numeric data, what we have to do is we have to put our criteria inside of quote marks. Equals, and what we were looking at is construction. Now, if you misspell construction or if you don't put it in correctly with the capital C, Excel is not going to see an exact match. So there's going to be a problem and it's going to fail on you. All right, so equals construction. Hits enter, and it says there are 366 of these. Another one that is important to us is equals countifs. Ifs means that it's going to have multiple criterias. Countif all of this and I'm going to bring it back up here to make sure that I know exactly which one we're looking for. We're looking for construction. So equals construction. And then it says, all right, now give me the second criteria. All right. So we're going to do criteria range. And we know from looking at this, I want you to show you that you don't have to left click and drag. We know that we're going to be looking here at column D now. So this is D2 through D605 because it's going to exactly match what we had in column C, right? And now we're going to put in our next criteria equals, I think we were looking for accountant, right? Yeah, construction accountant. Close it off. And it says, wait a second, we think we have a typo in this. And the typo, we'll click yes. And the issue here was that the formula was not correct whenever it was put in there. So we have count if C2 to C605 equals construction, and in D2 to D605 equals accountant. So that takes care of that. Allows you to be able to take a look or to identify that there really are 45 construction accountants using the countif functions. Let's make sure that we've gone through count A, countifs. Last one that we're going to go back in and just remind ourselves on is on the data, we can run a max and min to make sure that there's nothing that's, out of alignment here. We can do equals min highlight all of our numeric data. And it would go in and it would help me identify any what we would call outliers. Okay, so this is min. And another outlier that we would get would be the max. And on the max, this is also where we would have identified those problems with the data that we had before, where we had $490 in here. So the max would identify it. Also, whenever you're working with categorical data, using the mins and the maxes are very helpful to you. You know, when you're looking at a 1 to 5 star scale, and in 1 to 5 star scale, and you run your equals min and equals max, you want to have something between 1 being the min and 5 being the max. Quick way just for you to find the data that is that's not right, that's messed up, that you could go in and work to fix. Now, the last things that we really have to work on here is we have the 2 data fields that are down here at the bottom that we don't know how to really deal with these yet. And should we just leave them alone? And we have 604 employees here. Missing 2 of them may not matter. However, there are other times that the missing field really could slow us down. So what I want to show you that you can do right now is important, very important if you've never used pivot tables before. If you click anywhere inside of our table and you go up to Insert, Pivot Table, it says, okay, what data are we looking at? The data we're looking at starts at A1 and it goes all the way to E605. All right, so this is the data we want to work with. Let's put this in a new worksheet, all right, so that it's not overriding anything here. I'm going to click OK. It brings in a wizard for me. And this wizard says, I have all this data. I have a way that I can put columns in, I can put rows in, and then I can do something with the information. If I left click on industry, and watch what's happening over here on the left side of the page. If I grab industry, left click it, and drag it to column, it says here's what's going on. I have automotive, construction, tech. I have some that are blank, and then I have grand total. So those are the only industries that I have going on. If I have left click on job and drag it to rows, now it's beginning to say, wait a second. I can go in now and I can identify how many automotive accountants I have, automotive analysts. All right, you see that it's beginning to now take all of that data that I have and then put it into categorical bins for me to be able to work with. Let's go first of all to wage. I'm going to left click on hourly wage and drag that down here to the values. All right, so now it's gone in and it has put numbers in here. But what did it put in? Look back down here again. It put in the sum of hourly wage. Now, Excel tries really hard to think for you and put things in for you. However, that doesn't always get it right. If you left click on the sum and then go to value field settings, you will be able to go in now and say, wait, I don't want the sum. I want the average amount that these people make, all right? So the average hourly wage for these people is now set in there. I can highlight these to where it's easier for me to look at, and I can put them in as currency. Now that's done. Now while I have that, let's go back over to our adjusted data, pull down here to the bottom. One way that we can do imputed values is for this construction accountant, we can say, why don't we just use the average? You know, why don't we use what an average construction accountant makes? The average construction accountant makes $39.81. So I can go back to my adjusted data and put in 39.81. On the side, make sure you tell it yes. How much does the average automotive engineer make? You can go back to your table, you can figure that in, you can put it in. All right. Now, last one I want to do, just to make sure that you get this, is you can also, from the pivot tables that we just built, you could go in and change that information to where it's a bit different. Let's go, in particular, if we wanted to look at the count of those. As a matter of fact, before we did the average, it would be nice to know, how many people are in that field. Can taking an average of it really help us? So I'm going to insert a pivot table. This time I want this pivot table to go right below what I had before. So what I did was I picked an existing worksheet. I went to the worksheet that I was interested in. I left-clicked on a cell. So it's going to put it in sheet 2, starting in A16. I'm clicking OK. What we had before was we had industry in the column. We had job over on my rows. And now whenever I bring in the hourly wage, again, it did a sum. Left click on it, value field settings. This time I just want to count. All right? How many are a count in this? And so it goes now and says that I have 44 construction accountants. That's probably, reasonable for me to work with. One thing that you will see in Excel oftentimes is these fields now that have been replaced with the number sign or hashtags. That just means that this field is not large enough yet. If you double left click, it will open it up and you'll see that there really are values there. Okay. I think that what we've done now is we've gone through and we've looked at your adjusted data. We've looked at all the different functions that can be used for you. We've looked at pivot tables. You should now be able to go in and fill all of these things in. It's a lot of new functions for you, but some really, really, really useful ones. At the end of it, what we're looking for is that our data is clean, that we've filled in as many blanks as we possibly can, and we've corrected any values that seem to be completely out of alignment. We found the outliers and we fixed them. Question is, oftentimes, do we need to fix those outliers? And that'll be something that we tackle as we continue on through this course, because sometimes the data really is the data. Other times it's humans have done something to mess the data up. All right, hopefully that helps get you everything set up to you where you can go in, answer the rest of these questions, and upload your answers. Good luck.